Hello learners, I welcome you once more in my lecture series on modern optics for Physics 1. Myself is Dr. Sucharita Bhattacharya, subject teacher of physics from Guru Nanak Institute of Technology, Kolkata, is delivering my lecture session for first semester BTech course, and the streams of students under considerations are computer science and engineering, information technology, and food technology. Now, I already mentioned that today I am starting my new lecture series on modern optics. So, today I am delivering the lecture 1 of modern optics. Now, this is included as module 5 in our physics course first year. That is, paper name is Physics 1, paper code is PH101. And its credit is 3 contacts, 3 lecture hour per week, and total number of lectures allocated is 36. Now, modern optics is included here as module 5, where we have total 7 lectures. Out of these 7 lectures, we have divided the modern optics into subsections in the form of 5.01, where we are going to discuss the laser, and another submodule is 5.02, where we are going to deliver the fiber optics. Now today I am starting the submodule 5.01 in the form of laser. Let us check what is there. The concepts of various emission and absorption process, Einstein's A and B coefficients and equations, working principle of laser, metastable state, population inversion, condition necessary for active laser action, optical resonator, illustrations of ruby laser, helium neon laser, semiconductor laser, applications of laser. Obviously, numerical problems will be included here too. The total number of lectures allocated here, as already mentioned, these are 5. Now, in case of submodule 5.02, that is fiber optics, there we will discuss the principle and propagation of light in optical fibers, the numerical aperture and acceptance angle definition and conceptualization, and then numerical problems will be there. Now, what about the course objective of this modern optics? The aim of this course is to provide an adequate exposure to develop insights of modern optics and its principles, along with the possible applications. The acquaintance of these principles would help budding engineers to understand the working of corresponding tools and techniques used in the industry to provide the necessary foundations for inculcating innovative approaches in modern optics. It also gives necessary exposure to the practical aspects, which is an essential component, obviously, of science and technologies. So, you students, after completion of this course, will be able to understand the characteristics of laser light. You will be able to explain the basic principles of working of laser and optical fiber. You can compare the working of different types of laser. You can apply the knowledge of total internal reflection in transmitting light through optical fibers. You can analyze the minimum requirements for lasing action, the implications of all important Einstein's AB coefficients to predict the wavelength domain of lasing action. And finally, you can justify the importance of light as a carrier of information. Now, definitely, these are the different course outcomes. Now, come to the case of helping books. The books on modern optics and modern physics in the form of a textbook of light by K.G. Majumdar and V. Ghosh, a textbook of light by Brijlal Subramaniam, textbook on modern optics by A.B. Gupta, the optics by Ajay Ghatak, optics by Heck, optics by R.K. Kaur, optics by Jenkins and White, and concept of modern physics in the form of Arthur Beiser's book, Very, very important one. This is concept of modern physics, and since modern optics definitely is a part of modern physics, that's why this book is a very help for you, very much helpful for you. Okay. In addition to that, general textbooks we have considered for you: the Engineering Physics by Khan Panigrahi, Basic Engineering Physics by Sujay Bhattacharya, that is McGraw-Hill publication, and Engineering Physics by S. Chand publication. The author is Dr. Sudipto Ghosh. Now, this is our website www.gnit.ac.in syllabus. So you can take a look for the detailing. Okay. Let us now move to our today's lesson. That means today's lesson, there are 5 lectures in laser. Today we are starting the first lecture in the form of introduction, characteristics of laser, concepts of various emission and absorption processes, metastable state, and finally the achievement of light amplification. That means the questions to be addressed in today's lesson plan are: what about laser? What are the characteristics of laser? What about stimulated absorption and emission? What is spontaneous emission? What is metastable state? And finally, how can you achieve the light amplification? Okay, so let us start our today's class. Now, what about the introduction? Just first take a look at the acronym LASER. What indicates? Light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. L for light, A for amplification by, S for stimulated, and then E and R emission of radiation. So the name suggests everything. What do you mean by laser? Basically, it is a device which produces light having some remarkable properties. Remarkable properties. Now, this is the appearance of a laser beam in the form of a laser show. Very fascinating one, and you must be familiar. In different show you have seen this type of laser show. Okay. Now, what about there? In this light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation and this remarkable fashion, the way it is being presented here, from where you are getting some idea that highly directional, very intensified, and different colors you are getting distinctly. So all of these are the various features of the laser light. I am just repeating: highly directional, very, very intensified, and giving you the different colors very distinctly in the form of the strictly monochromatic light. Okay. Now let us explore how it is happening like this and what is there really in these terms. Now first is the light. All of us are familiar with light. What about that? It is an energy, but definitely we can see it. That means it is visible. Now, how we used to get the light? Light is emitted as energy by an atom when electron jumps from an orbit of atom of higher energy to one at lower energy in the form of photons, following E equal to h nu, the very famous Planck's law, equal to hc by lambda, where E is the energy of the photon emitted, h is the Planck's constant, nu is the frequency of radiation, and c is the velocity of light in free space. Lambda is the corresponding wavelength. Obviously, when you are talking about light, you must consider that lambda and nu, that means wavelength and frequency, must be in the visible range. Basically, what is happening here, you know, according to Bohr's theory, that in each and every atom surrounding the positively charged nucleus, we have equal amount of negative charges which are carried by number of electrons, each carry a minimum amount of negative charge. These electrons revolve around the atoms in certain specified stable orbits. Now, when electrons rotate in these orbits, the energy of the atom remains fixed. But if electrons jump from higher orbit to lower orbit, what is happening? The atomic energy, you can say the electrons are jumping from higher to lower energy state. So what will happen? Emission of, basically we can say that it is the jump, it is the transition of the atom. It is the transition of the atom from higher energy state to lower energy state. But who is carrying this energy of the atom? Definitely the orbiting electrons. That's why it is told that energy of transition of the atom in terms of the electron from higher energy state to lower energy state is for atom, gives rise to the energy of emission in the form of E equal to h nu. That means when atomic transition is from higher to lower energy state, then you are getting the extra energy to come out in the form of radiation of emission. The wavelength is lambda, and if this is in the visible range, then we can say that the emitted radiation is nothing but light. Okay, so this is light. Then what about amplification? Amplification is increase in number of photons. Previously, I also mentioned nu and lambda, and now I am telling the number of photons. What about photon? Photon is the quantum of light energy. Photon is the quantum of light energy. So amplification is increase in number of photons in successive stages of same wavelength. That means frequency, same energy, and in same direction, and in same phase by stimulated emission of radiation. So amplification is increase in number of photons in successive stages of same wavelength or frequency, same energy, and in same direction and same phase by stimulated emission of radiation. Now, the basic principle involved in lasing action is this phenomenon of stimulated emission of radiation, which was predicted by none other than Einstein way back in 1917. Now, in case of stimulated emission of radiation, atomic transition takes place in presence of photon, that is the quantum of the light energy or electromagnetic radiation. So, this photon is working as stimulus. So, it is called the stimulated emission of radiation. The radiation emission in presence of the stimulating agent like photon is termed as stimulated emission of radiation. In general, when an atom is in the excited state, it can make a transition to a lower energy state through the emission of electromagnetic radiation. I already mentioned that when atom comes down, that is jumps down to lower energy state, it can make a transition to a lower energy state through the emission of electromagnetic radiation. Basically, which one is coming? That is electron is coming, and then emission is coming out in the form of electromagnetic radiation. Electron is jumping from higher to lower energy state of the corresponding atom. But in contrast to absorption process, the emission can occur into different ways. In contrast to absorption process, emission can take place into different ways. First one is the spontaneous emission, and second one is the stimulated emission, about which we already mentioned. Now the term spontaneous emission means in absence of stimulating agent, the emission is possible. But in case of stimulated emission, you need the stimulating agent for the emission to be possible. Now, let us move a little bit to get something more. Before going to the property of the laser, let us first take a look at the fact that laser light is different than ordinary light. Already we have seen the laser light. It is not looking like the ordinary light. What about the special characteristics? In ordinary source of light like a sodium lamp, just take a look at the sodium lamp. Here atoms emit photons independently of each other in different phases. That means atomic system, if you consider there are millions of atoms, so millions of atoms can come down to lower energy state with the emission of radiation in the form of photons, and it can happen independently of each other in different phases. So emitted light is incoherent. Now from the chapter on interference, you know coherence means same phase. So if different atoms emit photons in different phases, emitted light will be incoherent. Energy of transition differs slightly from photon to photon. So wavelength of light is not uniquely defined in case of ordinary light. There is a spread delta lambda in the wavelength. So light is not perfectly monochromatic in case of the ordinary light like a sodium lamp. Also, there are random directions in different transitions resulting in not strictly parallel beam of light. That means in case of the random directions of transitions happen for the emission of the photons, so the light beams are not strictly parallel or the directional. So ordinary light is not very intensified or bright. Obviously, if there is scattering of light in different directions, it is not merging or converging in a single direction. Obviously the total light intensity will be much lesser. Naturally, incoherence, not perfectly monochromaticity, and not strictly parallel nature of light, and not so intensified beam are the characteristics of ordinary source of light. But light emitted from a laser source are something different. They are coherent, that means in same phase all emitting photons. They are monochromatic, they are collimated. Here it is collimated means directional. Here it is found that the spread in the wavelength is of the order of 10 to the power minus 6 nanometer. So almost negligible spread in wavelength. So they are collimated and very bright. Okay. Now out of these four characteristics, already I have shown you in the last figure that monochromaticity, the collimated and bright one, you are looking just visibly, but coherence you cannot see, you cannot get the idea by looking at it. For your information, a beam of laser can go to the moon and return to the earth without much loss in intensity, which shows that laser may be obtained as an almost perfectly parallel beam. I think this information is very much with you, isn't that? Now let us move to the three basic transitions about the activity of the laser or lasing action. The first one is termed as stimulated absorption. I already mentioned in comparison to absorption, there are two types of emission. The first one is absorption, only one type, and it is always stimulated type. Why it is always stimulated type? Let us consider an atom having two allowed energy states E1 and E2. So we are considering one atom, its allowed energy states are E1 and E2. Obviously E2 is the upper energy level and E1 is the lower energy level. So E2 is greater than E1. Now, if a photon with energy E2 minus E1 is incident on the atom, if you inject a photon in the system whose energy is E2 minus E1, then obviously this photon will interact with the atom and the atom will absorb the energy of the photon. Because what is the atom's energy? Atom is in the lower energy state, that is E1. And what about the photon's energy? That is E2 minus E1. This is the difference of the energy states. Now when the photon is injected, atom will absorb the energy of the photon. So what about the total energy of the atom now? E1 plus E2 minus E1, because the energy of the photon is E2 minus E1 and atom's energy in the lower energy state is E1. So now after absorbing the energy of the photon, atom's energy is becoming E2. So atom will be in the upper energy level. So the atom will be in the upper energy level. That means what we are getting, that there are incident photons stimulated the atom to absorb its energy. So what we are getting, that incident photon has stimulated the atom to absorb its energy. So this is stimulated absorption of light. This is stimulated absorption of light. Now my question is, whether without any stimulating agent absorption is possible? Definitely your answer is not, because you are moving from lower energy state to upper energy state. So to move from lower to upper or higher, we need to supply some energy here in our situation in the form of photon. So sometimes it is written as only absorption, but mind it, absorption is always stimulated type. That's why I have mentioned stimulated absorption. You may write absorption, no harm. Okay. So the stimulated absorption of light shows that incident photon stimulated the atom to absorb its energy. Now the rate of stimulated absorption depends on what? The rate of the stimulated absorption depends on the intensity of the external field. That means the incident photon. The rate of stimulated absorption, that means number of stimulated absorption per unit time, it depends on the intensity of the external field, that is incident photon, and the number of atoms in the lower energy state, and the number of atoms in the lower energy state. One is the intensity of the external field, that is incident photon, and obviously the number of atoms in the lower energy state. More the number of atoms in the lower energy level and more the intensified the incident photon is, obviously the upward transition, that means the stimulated absorption, will be more and more. The upward transition of the stimulated absorption will be more and more. Mind it, here energy states are for atom, but the energy transferred normally we consider in terms of the electrons of the atoms. Okay, but mind it, energy states are for atoms only, not for electrons. Clear? Now let us move to the second basic transition in the form of first type of emission, that is the more common one, that is the spontaneous emission. So if the atom is in the higher energy state E2, if the atom is in the higher energy state E2, and if you leave the atom there, previously by absorbing the energy of the photon, the atom is moving in the higher energy state E2. So you leave the atom there, what will happen? Eventually it will come down to the lower energy state. After some time, it will automatically come down to the lower energy state, and during the process, it emits a photon having energy E2 minus E1. During the process, the atom, when come down from E2 to E1, it will emit a photon with energy E2 minus E1. This is called spontaneous emission, because no external agent is present here to make this emission process possible. Now, the rate of spontaneous emission depends on, obviously, only the number of atoms in the higher energy state. The rate of spontaneous emission depends on the number of atoms in the higher energy state, because no external agent is present here. Okay. Now, since these atoms can come down to lower energy state of its own, so the emitted photon will move in any random direction. The atom's emission, the atomic emission, the transition in the form of emission is not controlled by any of the agency. That's why it is randomly done, and photon emission also is in random direction. Now here, one point we have to consider very carefully. Just take a look. in the form of metastable state. What about that? Typically, an atom can stay in an excited state for 10 nanoseconds. 10 nanosecond means 10 to the power minus 8 second, because 1 nanosecond is 10 to the power minus 9 second. That is called the lifetime of the state. That means I mentioned here that if you leave the atom there, it will eventually come down to lower energy state. Now, what about eventuality? Eventuality means the time up to which an atom can stay in an excited state. In general, that time is 10 nanoseconds, the lifetime of the state. But there are some atoms with excited states of lifetime 1 millisecond. That means 10 to the power minus 3 second. It is 10 to the power minus 8 second. Here it is 10 to the power minus 3 second. That means here the lifetime of the atomic states are 10 to the power 5 times longer than the usual lifetime. These type of states, the lifetime of the atom is 10 to the power 5 times longer than usual lifetime, and these are termed as metastable state. Metastable state. The key to the operation of laser is the presence of such metastable states in the atoms. The key to the operation of laser is the presence of such states in atoms. So mind it, when we are talking about the emission, that atoms will come down to lower energy state of its own eventually, we have to keep in our mind whether the excited state is regular excited state with lifetime of 10 nanosecond, that means 10 to the power minus 8 second, or whether these are metastable state whose lifetime is of the order of 1 millisecond, that is 10 to the power minus 3 second. So 10 to the power 5 times longer than usual lifetime. Because depending upon that, whether atoms will come down immediately to lower energy state or it will not come down, it will wait there, that will depend. And in our due course, we will find that the key to the operation of laser is the presence of such states in atoms. Okay. Now let us move to the third type of basic transition, very, very important one, that is the stimulated emission, which was predicted by the great Einstein. Here, let us suppose the atom is again in the higher energy state, E2, and a photon with energy E2 minus E1 is incident on it. Just take a look. In the previous one, we considered the atom was in the higher energy state, but it was kept, it was left there. No other photon was present there. Because of emission, only you got the photon to come out. But here the situation is something different. The atom is again in the higher energy state, and a photon with energy E2 minus E1 is incident on it. Okay. Look here. The energy of the atom is E2. The energy of the photon is E2 minus E1. That means it is less than the atomic energy. So the incident photon's energy, logically, atom will not accept or absorb. The incident photon's energy is less than the energy of the atom. So naturally, the photon's energy will not be absorbed by the atom. The incident photon, what it will do, interact with the atom and may cause the atom to come down to the lower energy state. That means as a signal, as a triggering signal, it may enter into the system to give the message to the atom to come down to lower energy state. That means in presence of the stimulating agent or the photon, you are getting the emission to be possible of the radiation of photon through the atomic transition from E2 to E1. Here, a fresh photon is emitted with the same energy. That means one photon is present in the system, but that photon's energy is not absorbed by the atom because its energy is more than this photon. So when the atom will come down to lower energy state, The energy of the emitted photon is E2 minus E1, and energy of the injecting photon is also E2 minus E1. So in total in the system, now you have two photons of exactly the same energy. That means they have same frequency or wavelength, because we know E equal to h nu according to Planck's law. E equal to h nu. So if E remain constant, then frequency as well as wavelength remain constant. That means the beam is monochromatic. The two photons coming out in the form of radiated beam, they are strictly monochromatic because their energies are exactly same. These two photons are in the same phase, that is coherent, because we know that photon emission and absorption are instantaneous in character. Photon emission and absorption are instantaneous in character. From the photoelectric effect, you are familiar with it, and their directions are same too. That means they are collimated. Their directions are same too, so they are collimated. I am repeating this part. The atom is in the higher energy state E2, and the photon with energy E2 minus E1 is incident on it. The incident photon interacts with the atom and may cause the atom to come down to lower energy state with the emission of a second photon of exactly the same energy as that of the injecting photon. That means with same frequency or wavelength, same phase and same direction. That means the emission of radiation perfectly monochromatic, coherent as well as collimated. Now, this process definitely is different from the spontaneous emission we just discussed, because here, because there the atom comes down to the lower energy state on its own. In case of the spontaneous emission, the atom comes down to the lower energy state on its own, but here the incident photon has stimulated the atom to do so. The rate of stimulated emission obviously then depends on the intensity of the external field, that is incident photon, just like the case of spontaneous emission, as well as the number of atoms in the higher energy state. In case of stimulated absorption, it was number of atoms in lower energy state and intensity of external field. But in case of stimulated emission, it is the number of atoms in the higher energy state as well as the intensity of the external field, that is incident photon. So I think you are understanding the difference between the spontaneous emission and the stimulated emission. Stimulated emission means emission in presence of stimulus agent or stimulating agent like photon. So here energy of the injecting or stimulating photon is not at all lost or absorbed by the atom, because atom's energy is more than that of the stimulating photon. Clear? Now let us move to the all important light amplification by stimulated emission part. So you got the idea about emission, then spontaneous emission, then stimulated emission, as well as stimulated absorption. Let us now move to the part that light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation, how it is happening. Let us consider a system of atoms. Till now, we have considered one atom. Here we are considering a system of atoms. Okay, each having two energy states. One is E1, the lower energy state. Other is E2, the upper energy or higher energy state. And incidentally, E2 is metastable state. Incidentally, E2 is metastable state. There is another allowed energy state, E1 I already mentioned, and obviously E1 is less than E2. Now, what about the system? Let us specify. The system may be a gas, may be a liquid in a cylindrical tube, contained inside a cylindrical tube, or a solid in the shape of a cylindrical rod. That means the three states of matter you can use. It may be gas, it may be liquid, it may be the solid, but we are restricting the shape in cylindrical form. Why? The things will be clear to you after in due course after some classes. Okay. The system may be a gas or a liquid in a cylindrical tube or a solid in the shape of a cylindrical rod. So this is the system. So this is the shape of like a cylinder, say. Now, very, very important, take a look. If by some technique the number of atoms in the metastable state E2 is made much larger than that in E1, that means the population of the atoms in energy state E2, you have to maintain much larger than the population of atoms in the energy state E1. And then if a photon of energy E2 minus E1 is incident on one of the atoms in metastable state, now you are maintaining the population or the number of atoms per unit volume in energy state E2 much larger than that of E1, and you are injecting one photon like the previous one with energy E2 minus E1 here. Then as the number of atoms in higher energy state is much larger than that in the lower energy state, obviously the probability of interaction of this photon with any of the atoms in the higher energy state will be much more than that in the lower energy state. You are injecting a photon with energy E2 minus E1, and since there are more atoms in higher energy state than that in the lower energy state, the probability of interaction of this photon with any of the atoms in higher energy state is much larger than that in the lower energy state. So what is the net result? If a photon of energy is incident on one of the atom in the metastable state, the atom drops to the state E1. Obviously, the atom will not absorb the energy of the photon because its energy is E2 minus E1, but it is entering into the system in the form of a triggering agent to give a signal. Okay, so the atom, any of the atom in the higher energy state by interacting with the photon will come down to the lower energy state, emitting a photon in same phase with same energy in same direction as the stimulating one. That means now you are having two photons of exactly the same energy in same phase, same direction as the stimulating one. Now, these two photons, they can interact with two more atoms in the higher energy state in the next step. In the next step, the two photons can interact with two more atoms in the state E2 provided the number of atoms in E2 is maintained much larger than E1. These two photons, one is the stimulating photon, other is the emitting photon. That means these two photons can interact with two more atoms in the higher energy state provided the number of atoms in the higher energy state is maintained much larger than that in E1. What will be the net result? Two more photons will come out. Two more photons will come out because two more atoms will come down to lower energy state, and all these two photons again they have the same energy, so same frequency, same wavelength, in same direction and in same phase. And so this process will continue. Number of photons keep on increasing. All of them have the same phase, same energy and same direction, which is nothing but the amplification of light. Because you have started with one photon, then you are getting two photons, then you are getting two more, that means four photons. In the next stage, if these four photons are available to interact with four more atoms in the energy state E2, provided the population in the energy state E2 is made much larger than E1, then you will get four more photons to come out here. 4 plus 4. If these four can interact with four atoms in the upper energy state, where the number of atoms are maintained much larger than E1 by some means. That means four more photons will come out. So starting with one photon, you are getting now 8 photons. These 8 photons may be available in the next stage, provided you can contain them within the neighborhood of the system by maintaining more atoms in the higher energy state than that in the lower energy state. So you are getting more and more photons of exactly the same energy in same phase, in same direction with same wavelength. That means what you are getting? Simply amplification of light is achieved. So the amplification of light is achieved. This is called light amplification because photon is the quantum of light energy and photon number increases, maintaining the energy, frequency, wavelength, phase, and direction. So this is nothing but the amplification of light. So I hope you are understanding how much interesting the phenomenon is, that in presence of a photon, you are having the emission. That's why the photon's energy is not used up, rather than you can consider it time and again to maintain this type of emission process with emission of radiation with more and more number of photons, intensifying the process. In case of mind it, if there are more atoms in the lower energy state, then if you inject a photon, definitely there will be the higher probability of photon interaction with atoms in the lower energy state. So what will be the net result? The photon's energy will be absorbed by the atoms in the higher energy state, and naturally you cannot increase the number of photons. Photon energy will be lost or absorbed by the atoms in the lower energy state. That means to have to achieve the light amplification, we have to maintain certain conditions what we got in today's session. Definitely in the next class, we will start from this point that what about the logic to how why this amplification is achieving, why this amplification is achieving. That means what basic conditions we have maintained here. Okay, so I think all the contents which I have mentioned at the beginning, everything we have covered in today's class, and things are totally new to you, but at the same time very, very interesting, isn't that? Okay, students. So let us end our today's session. Thank you. You stay safe and stay healthy. So bye.